Hello, welcome to a video about polymorphism. What is polymorphism? Well, polymorphism is the idea that when we're using inheritance in our programs, whenever we have classes that inherit from another class, so if we're thinking about our traffic example, right, we have a car and that inherits from the vehicle class. It's a subclass of the vehicle class. That means that we can really talk about the car both as a car, because that's the class that we defined, but we can also talk about it as a vehicle, because a car is a vehicle, right? That's what extending the vehicle class means. It's a vehicle plus some extra stuff. But in programming, what that means, which can be very, very useful, is that we can treat a class both as the kind of thing it is. We can treat a car as a car, but we can also treat a car as a vehicle if that's convenient. And sometimes that is extremely convenient. And that's what I want to talk about in a short example right now. So if we return to our example of the traffic, right? So we have these three classes. We've got a vehicle class that defines how vehicles in general behave. They have these properties. They can move, they can wrap, and they can display. As we know, we don't put anything here in this display because that's defined down in the specific car and motorcycle classes. And then we have the specific car class, which extends the vehicle and adds some specific extra pieces in, such as drunk driving, and a particular way of displaying the car, as well as a particular speed of movement and dimensions. And then a motorcycle is a simpler thing. It just determines some specific dimensions, a specific speed that the motorcycle moves at, and the fact that it's yellow, basically, right? So a car and a motorcycle, they're unique things, right? A car and a motorcycle behave differently from one another. They look different to one another. Cars are drunk. But they're both vehicles. They both extend vehicle, and therefore they both have all of this stuff here inside the vehicle as kind of a guaranteed part of what they are. So the fact that I can think about a motorcycle as both a motorcycle and a vehicle, and I can think about a car as both a car and a vehicle, that is what polymorphism means, right? Polymorphism literally means many shapes or multiple shapes. A car is two shapes. It's a car and it's a vehicle. And it turns out that we can use that in a really interesting way in our programs because it kind of guarantees some things. So the way that our program works right now is that we've completely separated the idea of a car and a motorcycle from one another, right? We've got an array of cars and an array of motorcycles. We populate the array of cars, we populate the array of motorcycles with our for loops, creating new cars and new motorcycles. And then in our draw loop, we go through all of the cars separately, move, wrap, and display those. And then we go through all of the motorcycles separately, and we move, wrap, and display those. But if we're thinking about polymorphism, we don't actually have to do things this way. In particular, notice how move, wrap, and display are all methods that exist in a vehicle. A vehicle can do all of those things. It can move, it can wrap, and it can display. Now again, admittedly, the display of just a generic vehicle like this is empty, but it is guaranteed to have a display method, right? Whatever it does. So when we're calling these things separately, really we could think about what we're doing here is treating both the car and the motorcycle just as a vehicle. Move, wrap, and display are things that vehicles can do. And for that reason, if we're just going to treat cars and motorcycles as vehicles in our draw loop, there's no real reason not to put them in the same array with one another. And this is one of those kind of rare cases where it's a good idea to put different kinds of things inside an array. So let's change our program. Instead of having a cars array, let's have a vehicles array. So this is going to be an array that stores anything in my program that is a kind of vehicle. Again, I'm not going to create any actual new vehicle things out of the vehicle class directly. I'm only going to be creating cars and motorcycles as before, but I'm going to think about them as vehicles. So I'm still going to have a number of cars. I'm not going to have a motorcycles array. And I'm going to have a number of motorcycles. So the new model of my program is basically kind of summed up here, right? I'm going to have an array of vehicles, whether they're cars or motorcycles, doesn't matter because they're all kinds of vehicles. And I'm going to have a specific number of cars and a specific number of motorcycles that I want to have inside my simulation. So that's the core idea behind my variables. how do I modify the rest of my program, and what's the advantage here, right? So when I'm creating these things, I still have to have separate for loops here, because I'm going to create cars and motorcycles separately, because there might be different numbers of them, right? So I'm going to count from I is 0 up to the number of cars, I'm going to choose a random position, and I'm going to make a car. All of this can stay the same, because that's just what it takes to make a new car. But instead of adding this car to the cars array, which I've removed, I'm going to add the car to the vehicles array, because a car is a kind of vehicle, and this array is going to contain things that are vehicles or are kinds of vehicles. And I'm going to do the same thing with my motorcycles. Instead of adding my motorcycles into the motorcycles array, I'm going to add them to the vehicles array as well. So this is an important step, right? Now, instead of having two separate arrays, cars and vehicles, each with their separate kind of object in them, I've got one array called vehicles, and it's got all of the cars and all of the motorcycles in it at once. And it can do that. It's conceptually, it's okay for me to do that, because we know that a car is a vehicle. It extends the vehicle class. And a motorcycle is also a vehicle. It extends the vehicle class. And that guarantees things about cars and motorcycles that lets me treat them as the same kind of thing. So in my creation period, I still have two for loops, but everything is going into the one array, the vehicles array. So by the end here, after the second for loop, I've got 20 things inside my vehicles array. I've got 10 cars, and I've got 10 motorcycles in there. The benefit comes when I decide that I want to do the key things in the draw loop. Because instead of, again, separately going through the cars and the vehicles, the cars and the motorcycles, I can now just go through the vehicles. So instead of all of this, I'll just delete this. All I need to do now is I've got one array, and I can say, let's go through the array of vehicles. So for I is 0, I is less than the length of the vehicles array, which is 20, we know. I is going to go up by 1 each time. Goodness me, got to work on my typing apparently. I'm going to pull out the current vehicle from the vehicles array. That's going to be the one at position I in that array. Starts at 0, goes up to vehicles.length. Again, as I'm pulling out these things, the thing that I pull out might be a car or it might be a motorcycle. It doesn't matter, because I'm only going to think about it inside this loop as just a generic vehicle, and I'm just going to do vehicle things with it. So I pull out the vehicle, and then, just as before actually, I can move the vehicle, because all vehicles can move. That's guaranteed by the vehicle class. And even though car does some more specific things in move, it's still just piggybacking on the idea that a vehicle can move, and the car is just making it more specific. All vehicles can wrap. That's another method that vehicles have. And again, car has a more specific wrap, but it's still just piggybacking on the idea that a vehicle can wrap. And all vehicles can display. This one's a bit cheeky, right? Because we know that in vehicle, we just have an empty display method, and car and motorcycle do all of the work here. But this is a reason why it's good to put that display method, even if it's empty, inside the vehicle class, is to say we want to guarantee that all vehicles have a display method. And that is what allows us here in the script to confidently use vehicle.display, because vehicle, the class, guarantees that there will be some form of display method, even though it's the car and motorcycle classes that really do the hard work there, and vehicle does really nothing except define the method. But that's all I need to do for my program now, right? Even though I have 10 motorcycles and 10 cars, they're all in this one array called vehicles. They all have a move, wrap, and display, and so my for loop can just go through all of the things that are vehicles and call their methods. Let's go and make sure that that works. Thank goodness. Would have been embarrassing if it hadn't, but it does. So it's the same resulting program, right? What we've done is we've gotten some more efficiencies of code out of this. We're avoiding repetition more and more, and that's always a goal. That's not the only goal of programming, but the less we repeat code, the less likely we are to break our code and to have mistakes and to have to think about things the same way over and over again. It's much, much better if we can collect all of the repeated code into just doing it once. So again, because we can think about cars and motorcycles as vehicles, it means that we can have a single array that contains all of the vehicles in my simulation. I still have to create them separately like this. There are clever ways of reducing this as well, but I mean, it's, you have to stop somewhere, and we're going to stop at this level. So we still separately create all of our cars and all of our motorcycles, putting them into the vehicles array. And then the beauty is here in draw, right, where we just need the one loop that goes through everything that's a vehicle, moves, wraps, and displays it. And this would be true even if we added more classes, you know, trucks, segways, skateboards, roller skaters, people on the luge for some reason going down the highway. Even if we had an array of vehicles that was full of all of those different types of things, because they would all be vehicles, they would all extend the vehicle class, they would be able to move, wrap, and display, and we would still only need this one loop to handle all of them. It's a beautiful thing. That's polymorphism, the many-shapedness of inheritance-based classes. Anytime you extend a class, you can always treat your class both as the specific, like the car, and the superclass that it extends, like the vehicle. And that's a beautiful thing, something to be treasured. And you can even have one single tear of joy rolling down your face if you feel like it as well. So that's it from me on polymorphism. It's a fairly simple idea, but it can be very powerful when used in the right places. This example that I'm showing you here is a key way that we would use it in any kind of simulation code especially. So hopefully that'll come in handy as you work on projects and ideas. That's it. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.